As you can see, work is progressing on the boat. In this week's video, we'll look at getting these frames put up and braced so that they're all in the right position and ready to accept all the hull planking that I've managed to put on so far. This is the plan for my bid log. It's a half width and it's 3'6" to the half, and it is 26'9" to this point where it starts to flare in at the front. That's another 7'3", and then I got a point here at 5'3", and my stem will make the connection up here at the front. So I've got all of this put together and get ready to go, so I can start setting up my frames and get everything else ready. So I got my put log, or the framework that's going to support all the frames of my boat, and what I'm going to do is I've got it squared up, but in this corner on these sides, all along this side, I'm going to fasten a block down into the concrete, make sure it's going to stay in place, and at the very back corner, right back there, I'll fasten that, and that'll stop the whole thing from twisting. I got frame 0 and frame 1 set here. We got them braced. I also have my stem up here just temporarily to make sure everything was fitting. We'll do a deep dive in how I have to prep each of these frames to be able to get them up and in place and ready to accept the keelson and stem. So my stem and my keelson is always inside the planking of the boat. So what I have to do is, on my frames that I built, I actually have to notch this in so that I can set my keelson and stem inside the frame, and then all the planking will go on the outside. So when I was making the frames, the pattern had marks for where their keelson would be, so I got it marked here and here to show the width of the keelson. I have to figure out the depth, okay? The plans themselves tell me that my keelson has to be at least 6 inches this way from the center point, plus a little bit of a filler piece so that I don't plane off half of it whenever I come through down to follow this angle. So I'm going to measure down about probably about 7.5 inches from the center here, and that is where the bottom of my keelson will be. And this here is the size of my keel that's outside the frame, so that would look like that if it was on the actual boat, okay? But I'm going to use that because I got some nice square corners and stuff to help set and trace all this, just to make it a little bit easier to make sure everything is set up where it should be. So there, I've got it marked now where I have to cut the keelson out. So after it's marked, I get to cut out the piece, and I'm using the reciprocating saw to do it, as it has a blade that's long enough to cut through it all. So Dad's here today, and what he's doing is putting these little blocks under the outside edge of the frames, just so that whenever we put the hull on, it doesn't cause it to sag, and they'll be tied onto there with a piece of OSB or plywood to be screwed down there and onto there, just to make sure they don't get kicked as people are walking by. So as Wave Rover didn't think this space was large enough anymore for him to continue his build, he decided to move his build up to his own shop. So that means I get that extra little bit of square footage, and because of that, if I take a wander down to the far end, I want to move my boat frame just a couple of feet ahead, just to give me a little bit more room here, because as you can see, this is relatively tight. So it'd be nice just to have a little bit extra room. So I'm planning on sliding the whole thing forward 2 feet. And to do that, I'm going to take a couple of ropes and drill in at this splice right here to be able to tie them together and then pull it forward. So I got my holes drilled, I got my ropes here hooked up to my truck, and we'll see if we can move this forward the 2 feet without any major twists or mishaps. And just like that, we moved it just a hair over our 2 foot mark, but that's great. Give me that extra room at the back that I want. So after moving the boat frame forward, I got it all realigned, and I'm just going to refasten these blocks into the floor just to make sure that nothing moves. So after we got the frames up, we ran this strapping along the inside just to tie them all together, removed the strapping from the outside, and we put these 2 angle braces to make sure that the frames wouldn't lean one way or the other. So up here on the stem, I do have this piece on the outside to tie it all together. So looking on the inside of the hull here, you can see how much room there's going to be. The frames themselves are all going to be removed after the hull is built. So I set up the laser level so it would mark where the water line was supposed to be, and as long as I don't touch this pile of wood that it's resting on, everything looks perfect, within like a 1/16 of an inch for the water line, and so I'm very happy with that. I'm just going to take a walk through with my laser level setup, and there's marks on these that this is lining right up with. So they're in line this way, and when you look up, the laser line is in the middle of the keel, so everything is looking really good. And that everything is lined up where it's supposed to be. So we got the boat frames all set up. Now our next thing is to take this huge pile of 2x10s, run it through our thickness planer, and bring them down to size so I can continue work on my stem/keelson that runs along the boat. If you enjoyed these videos, could you please subscribe, like, and share. We'll catch you next time.